Fionna and Cake is a miniseries on HBO Max that serves as kind of a sequel to Adventure Time, and everybody who watched it seemed to agree that it's pretty cool. However, there's one criticism that I've been hearing online a lot, which is that the show doesn't do much justice for the characters of Fionna and Cake, that they feel like side characters in their own series, and that the real protagonist is Simon. And while I think the sentiment is valid to a certain degree, I also feel like it's a bit misguided and unfair. I feel like that's taking Fionna and Cake's development for granted. So, the goal of this video is to show some appreciation for Fionna's character, the journey she goes through, and essentially explain why the series is named after her and Cake, instead of Simon. For starters, I think it's important to understand the thematic relevance of having Simon go on an adventure along with Fionna. So let's see what it does for his character before we move on to our main duo. And right off the bat, I think the premise is already very interesting. Simon is basically forced to face Ice King's favorite gender-bent characters. And it's funny because it shows how both Simon and the Ice King are never at peace with their circumstances. Ice King doesn't get to have Fionna and Cake, but he does meet Betty. Simon doesn't get to have Betty, but he does meet Fionna and Cake. So as you can see, there's this concept in which it doesn't matter if Simon wears the crown or not, he never gets what he wants. You see, Simon was a man who downplayed his worth so much that he never took notice of Betty, a person whose love for him was so strong she threw away her own identity. So with that, the show immediately creates a dilemma. Simon, feeling completely useless and out of place at the Land of Ooo, is presented a situation where he has the ability to turn Ice King's dream into a reality, and get some sort of moral fulfillment out of it. After all, everybody around him seemed to like Fionna and Cake, but it's only at the cost of the identity Betty fought so hard to protect, which is his own. And that's the main catch. Simon doesn't know how to value himself if it's not for the sake of others. His journey is all about acceptance and learning to appreciate what he currently has, which is a direct mirror to Fionna's arc. Just like Simon, she also fantasizes of a better life, a different world where she doesn't feel so out of place. And then it's easy to form the connection. Simon's perfect world is the exact opposite of Fionna's. He doesn't want to live in the magical Land of Ooo, while Fionna craves for something like that.
I can't relate to any of this anymore. This world, these people.
Both lack any purpose in the world they are, and they want each other's life. So clearly, Simon and Fionna are in very similar places. Simon had a happy life with Betty, and then the crown happened, and now he's sad in a world that's completely alien to him. Just like Fionna, she was happy at her magical world. Then Golb happened, and now she's sad in a world that's totally boring for her. The two of them need to learn how to live in their respective universe. And in that respect, Fionna's arc shares the same finish line as Simon's, but not really the same road. Because there is one aspect that sets their journey apart, and it's the fact that these two characters have totally opposite flaws. As stated before, Simon's problem is that he is way too selfless, while Fionna is very selfish and impulsive. So even if the ultimate target is the same, what these two need to learn are completely different things. And when it comes to that, I would argue Simon's growth is much more transparent than Fionna's, because putting on the crown is obviously not going to solve anything for him. So all the story really needs to do for Simon's character to work is establish a connection between him and Fionna, so that eventually she can understand the price he would have to pay. Which we see throughout the show. That's easy peasy for him. Simon is a caring person. His objective isn't out of line with who he usually is. While with Fionna, it's way more tricky because what the series needs to do is make her give up the objective in the first place. And what I personally consider to be the brilliant move of this miniseries is how it essentially gives Fionna exactly what she wants right away. It basically goes, alright Fionna, let's say we grant your wish. Then what? Guys, what I'm saying is that this show is all about humbling this bitch. It's a cautionary tale. Fionna doesn't get the implications of her own desires. And then the rest of the series serves as a slow burn towards that realization. What she doesn't understand is that a different universe requires a completely different set of skills, different mindset, etc.
What did I do wrong?
There will always be consequences. The show even illustrates that. You know, I see a lot of praise around the Winter King episode because of the Simon content, but I think we overlook how pivotal it is for Fionna's character. Simon's development isn't even that impressive in this world. All he learned is that he's not as shitty as he thought he was, which is honestly kinda obvious, we already knew that.
That place was messed up, because that Simon was messed up.
Plus, this is the oldest trick in the book. To make a situation look good, you just gotta come up with a worse one. Now let's look at Fionna. Once we get to this winter world, she relives her fantasies from episode 1. Remember that? She's fighting monsters, kissing a sexy ice prince. She's literally living her actual dream and loving it. But then, the episode immediately takes all of that away from her by killing the Winter King and revealing the Candy Queen as the true victim of that universe. From that point on, Fionna obviously starts getting more reflective on what she's doing. She realizes that all these universes have circumstances of their own. She never considered that a magical reality is still just that, a reality with conditions, a history. And you can't just go around beating people, Fionna, what the fuck?
What do you know about a magic crown?
Please, I'm just a sweet butcher.
Fionna's growth has a tangible line of events. It's slow, but it's all there. In Farm World, she realizes she can't really fight. She's not exactly built for this.
I got stomped in the last world.
In the Winter World, she finds out her actions might be putting others at risk.
Have I been hurting people in all these universes?
And in the Vampire World, her mentality is further reinforced when she becomes the reason for Martin's death. She almost turns into a vampire. She almost dies. Fionna is no longer excited about these universes. Like, it's honestly fascinating. The show just keeps bullying this poor girl until she's traumatized enough to not want what she thinks she wants anymore. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that a little weird? How come Fionna can't deal with those things if in the original series she had no problem understanding her magical surroundings? And well, the thing is, the show does acknowledge that.
Weird. You never had any trouble with skirts in my stories.
The Fionna we follow is not 100% the same Fionna from the old stories. She has her own preferences, her own ambitions, and most importantly, she's not really familiar with the intricacies of a magic reality, which also strengthens the narrative rhymes between her and Simon. Simon's Fionna is different than Ice King's Fionna, hence her growing fear.
I almost got 8! This world is scary.
So in reality, Fionna's journey requires more steps than Simon's. Because you see, Simon's character isn't really morphing according to the things he experienced in the multiverse. He's just tagging along. Even after all the worlds they went through, he doesn't change his mind about putting on the crown until the very, very end. For Simon to learn his lesson, we simply need him to see the multiverse for himself. It's just one more element that influences his final decision, which we'll get to in a bit. However, another huge factor that plays into said decision is Fionna's choice to keep her world intact, which is a choice she would never make if not for the events of the series. That's why it's vital for Simon to form a connection with Fionna. Why would she want him to put on the crown now? After the Winter World, after seeing the Ice King tapes, after almost dying like a bunch of times? She's terrified. She has no idea what the crown will do to her universe. And that leads us to Cake, a character whose existence is fundamental in representing the core values of the show. Because it would be one thing if all the story wanted to say was, oh, your dreams are dumb, reality sucks, deal with it. But it's the presence of Cake that denies this idea. Contrary to Fionna's character, Cake doesn't resent the magic, she enjoys being a stretchy cat. Hell, her own episode is all about her singing how fascinated she is by the land of Vu. While Fionna regrets her decisions, Cake is eager to make her own. The series slowly built this impasse between the two until it became a conflict. By the time we get to Jerry, Fionna doesn't even know what she wants anymore. In the vampire world, she kept hindering Cake's actions because she's scared for her cat, while Cake is frustrated because she feels like Fionna's newfound appreciation for their universe is only getting in the way of her desires. Cake absolutely loves magic. That's what her character is all about. She wants to fight the vampires. She wants to see weird shit.
Kiss each other!
Don't think it hasn't occurred to me.
And it's her dynamic with Fionna that encapsulates the main lessons of the show. Because they're both right. You should appreciate what you have and the world around you, but also be daring to pursue the dreams that are within your reach. That's even reflected in the finale. Say what you want about the notorious tonal shift, but the resolution is all about having the best of both worlds. Fionna gets to find comfort in her ordinary city, while Cake gets to have a couple magic friends, like the squirrel, or that tea alien thing. Have we turned Fionna's world back into a parody from the main show, then the implication would be that these characters remain a mere fanfiction. Prismo's fanfiction, Ice King's fanfiction, Fionna's fanfiction, which is contradictory of the entire point of her development. In trying to bring said fanfic into reality, she only hurt people. She killed people even. So now she's finally ready to put others before her and become a legitimate, true hero.
Our universe was inside one dude for years and years. But it wouldn't be right for us to have it either.
That's also why the show focuses so much on Marshall and Gary's relationship. It's there to get us invested in this regular world, to emphasize what we do have and why we should care for it. They are a part of this version of Fionna and Cake's world. Another detail that's easy to take at face value is when Cake turns into Godzilla. On the surface, it's just a neat, funny little reference, but it's also supposed to be a cathartic moment for her character. She's finally taking matters into her own hand and going up against a real threat in the Scarab. The finale is all about Fionna and Cake becoming who they were always meant to be. Okay, so now that we got this far, how does it all go back to Simon? Well, that's the thing. This show is about Fionna and Cake saving their universe and validating their existence, which is symbolic of Simon finally accepting his own. He wouldn't have learned what he needed to learn if it weren't for Fionna and Cake. Let me try to explain this more succinctly. We know Simon's at a bad place ever since the events of the original show's finale. He can't let go of the past, he keeps convincing himself that he screwed up, things could have been different, he could have made better choices. And the way the series tackles that is by constantly showing us universes of presumably good outcomes. In episode 2, Simon says to Marcy she would have been fine without him. Then we go to the vampire world, and nope, she wouldn't. We go to a universe where Simon conquered the crown and stayed sane, but nope, it's a bad Simon. So clearly, this is the show telling Simon, God damn it man, stop beating yourself over stuff you have no control over. There's no use in fantasizing on what could have been since we only have one reality, one life. And even if we could go back, nothing guarantees it would be a better outcome than what we got now, as the show illustrates throughout the multiverse. Simon needs to stop romanticizing the past, more specifically his past with Betty.
But wait, this isn't how it happened.
Hence why the finale makes a point on having her say that she has no regrets. Because regardless of what could have been, she still appreciates what was. She doesn't even blame him for what happened. How could she? There was no way of knowing what went down their lives.
I guess that's not Casper's fault, per se.
No, but he could have been more thoughtful.
The core idea of all this is that Simon should acknowledge what Betty gave him and don't commit the same mistakes she did. That is Betty's wish, for him to live on at the Land of Vu, to keep Simon safe. It's only after this interaction at the very last episode that Simon gets it. By being just a little bit more thoughtful of Betty's sacrifice and accepting the reality of his magic world, he can finally be at peace with himself.
I only offered to become Ice King because I felt my life didn't matter. But I'm really no less worthy of life than Fionna or Cake.
Do you see where I'm going with this? Simon needs to develop the traits of our main heroines. The same traits of the characters he rejected at the beginning of the series. Ever since the first ritual, Simon summoned Fionna and Cake, and they are the ones who gave him the possibility to get closure with Betty. Fionna and Cake are the heroes of the show. They saved Simon by saving themselves. Simon needs to value his own life, like Fionna, and embrace the magic of his own universe, like Cake. He needs to be more like Fionna and Cake.
This whole experience with Fionna and Cake helped me realize that my life is worthwhile.
Simon is still without a doubt the heart of the series, but it's our heroes, the ones who make it beat. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why the series is called Fionna and Cake. So yeah, there you have it. Hopefully you could make some sense out of it. And even if you didn't, I appreciate you for hearing my thoughts until the end. Thanks for watching and have a good day.